Welcome back. According to the Santa Shoebox Project, 60% of children start grade 1 without ever holding a book. Now, this has also resulted in learners having unequal education outcomes at a later stage of their schooling. Deb Zelezniak is CEO at the Santa Shoebox Project and also joins us to tell us how the organization is dealing with the problem. Deb, a pleasure to have you on the program this afternoon. Firstly, tell us what inspired you to initiate the collaborative effort between the Santa Shoebox Project as well as a book dash to really address this critical issue, and this is of childhood literacy in South Africa.
Correct. In Nhlanhla, we can't all be experts in every field. And as the Santa Shoebox Project reaches up to 80,000 children in their homes each year, this was a match made in heaven. Book Dash are open source publishers. They write children's books centered in Cape Town, African stories, illustrated by South Africans, and they do so really as experts. We have partnered with them for many years, having distributed over 300,000 of their books, bearing in mind they've already distributed 3 million. We decided this year we were going to partner on an additional 80,000 books, ensuring that every single Santa Shoebox Project beneficiary receives at least one book in their shoebox this year.
Could you please elaborate on the specific challenges that children in the country are facing regarding access to books and how these challenges actually impact their overall academic and personal development?
Absolutely. Impoverished children attending one of the thousands of early childhood development centers countrywide very often don't have books in their own homes. It's a staggering 65% of homes with young children that do not have a single children's book in their homes. And even though over 90% of adults agree that reading to their children improves their academic success, unfortunately, only 50% of those same adults actually do read with their children. Children under the age of 5 have an unrepeated rate of brain development. And if we don't tap into that and get books into those children's hands, I'm afraid we'll never catch up. And it sets the child up on a back foot to succeed in their academic career going forward. And we all know where that ends up with adults that unfortunately don't have a solid educational background.
So from what I've read, the Santa Shoebox Project really aims to provide not only tangible necessities, but also intangible assets like books. How do you perceive the role of books in really empowering children, but also fostering a love for learning as well?
That's a great question, because books are always seen simply as a tool for literacy, but that isn't actually the extent of how they can impact on a child's development. Literacy is, of course, the cornerstone of reading, but books also impact on numeracy, on social and emotional development, of course, on physical development, the motor skills required when actually turning the pages or handling a book. And as you quite rightly said, 60% of children starting grade 1 have never even held a book. So books impact on many aspects of early childhood development and on supporting many of those developmental milestones. We see children who don't have access to books, who have low levels of literacy, unfortunately, making choices later in life that are antisocial, that are, in fact, not in support of pro-social skills, things like generosity, like kindness, like reaching out, like empathy. And these are all skills that when children don't acquire early in life, unfortunately result in poor choices rather later in life.
So in your experience, what are some of the most effective strategies or even interventions for promoting literacy, especially amongst children, but also especially in underserved communities or poor communities?
Yeah. Look, reading with one's own children is an absolutely irreplaceably valuable time spent. As I said, it supports those all-important pro-social skills that we need as adults. The Department of Basic Education statistics don't paint a very healthy picture. 70% of our public schools do not have libraries, and of those that do, over a third are not stocked. I think it's imperative for any one of us who has resources to support non-profit organizations, schools in their communities, in their reaching out into impoverished communities with literacy drives, with book drives. I think it's not out of anyone's access. If it's not monetary support, time spent reading with children is an absolutely invaluable contribution to childhood literacy.
So, Deb, from what I gather, the issue of childhood literacy is complex and multifaceted. But how do socioeconomic factors really intersect with the lack of access to books? And what can be done to address these systematic barriers, if you will?
It's a tough choice that many of our impoverished families have to make. I think if it comes down to choosing whether to put food on the table or buy a book, we all know where that decision's going to lie. We do, though, hope that children, even in impoverished communities, have access to municipal libraries. In fact, even certain community centers focus on reading because it is something that brings a community together, brings a group of children together. As I said before, I think any resourced organization, any resourced individual should make that informed decision to support literacy in their own community, in the society at large. There are many NPOs that focus on exactly this challenge, knowing how critical it is in building robust societies. It's never too late, but of course, the sooner we get books into the hands of children, the younger those children are, the most return on investment, really, we'll see in the later lives.
Could you share any success stories or memorable moments from your work with the Santa Shoebox Project that really highlight the transformative power of providing books to children?
These are anecdotal, of course, but I'd share them with absolute pleasure. Last year, in fact, I was at a primary school, a wonderful primary school out near Villersdorp in the Western Cape. And a young girl, I heard her shrieks of joy and rushed over to find out what all the fuss was about. And it was her book dash book that we'd included. And it was the story of Basetsana Khumalo. This young woman saw her as a role model, quite rightly so, and was just shrieking with joy and holding the book close to her chest. You know, these are stories that ignite imagination, they ignite potential. And I think when a child is living in an impoverished home, those are ingredients that are imperatives for their own self-esteem. I think without hope, it's very hard to maintain a focus on one's own trajectory. And I think that's what books do. They bring hope, they bring joy, they bring imagination, and they ignite possibility in young lives.
It would seem that collaboration seems to be a key aspect of your approach to tackling childhood illiteracy. How do you envision expanding and even strengthening partnerships to further amplify the impact of your initiatives?
That's a great question. We completely accept that the Santa Shoebox Project is not the expert in many fields that we wish to have an impact in. And in that respect, we have partnered with, of course, Book Dash, as you mentioned. We've also partnered with Learning and Reach, the Reach Trust, Impande, many other established NPOs in doing a lot of the work that we do under what we call the SSP Legacy Initiative, while we're best known as an end-of-year gift-giving initiative. For the first 6 months of every campaign, we focus on our SSP Legacy initiatives. And under that, we build early childhood development centers in rural areas. We train early childhood development practitioners in skills that they perhaps may have not acquired. And we install reading corners in under-resourced early childhood development centers countrywide. It's something very, very close to our hearts because what we've realized is that while a Santa Shoebox impacts on the life of the child receiving it, they still live in communities that don't have access to the resources that more resourced communities would have access to, more privileged communities would have access to. And in that way, we hope to improve the living conditions of the underprivileged child in an economically stretched community throughout South Africa.
Deb, as we wrap up our conversation, but also looking ahead, what are your long-term goals and aspirations for the Santa Shoebox Project, really in its mission to ensure that every child in South Africa has an opportunity to develop these essential literacy skills?
We will continue in our work with the Santa Shoebox. We believe that it's not just a gift. It certainly imbues the child with a sense of being seen, with a sense of their own value, and it gifts them. And I mean, what child does not deserve to have some treats and essentials, of course, at the end of the year, and setting them up for the curriculum and the school year ahead. In our SSP Legacy initiative, we are absolutely adamant in tackling the fact that there are early childhood development practitioners out there who simply are not empowered, who simply are not given access to the skills that they need. They do their work with love, with passion, and with commitment. But these are largely women who are overlooked and do not have access to what they need to adequately teach children in those all-important Thrive by 5 developmental years. It's where our hearts lie, it's where our passion lies, and it's also where we know absolutely that the investment in a child returns, and in absolutely immeasurable ways in their later years. It's where our passion lies, and we're going to continue to tackle those difficult aspects of a child's development looking ahead.